What is your name?
Fred Bressler.
Tom Hack.
Greg Hack.
My name is Larry Grunwald-Reese.
Willie Armstrong.
73.
75.
Scott, 42.
68 years old.
95.
I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. Well, it was either join or get drafted, and I chose to join instead of being drafted. Matter of fact, when I was in boot camp, I got my draft notice, and they just told me to ignore it. They would know where I was at.
There are many reasons, actually. One, 9/11 had just happened a couple years earlier. I'd always wanted to do it since I was probably about 8 years old, and it just seemed like the right thing to do at that time. I had already gone through college and wasn't liking the job I was in, so I figured a little excitement and adventure, and that led me there. The Army. We kind of had a long-standing Army in our tradition. My grandfather, my father, and then me. Couldn't be a Marine. They were too. I was a little smart for them, is what they would say. And basically, just the Army was. I got to pick my job. Marines, you didn't. Coast Guard, I was not smart enough for. Air Force, they did a lot of running and whatnot. So Navy, I just wasn't interested in being in a boat for forever. So.
Why did you
They
choose?
joined me.
They joined
I was a conscript. Yeah.
Okay. You
Army.
Army.
I joined the Air Force in November of 1977.
I was drafted. I was in high school, junior year. And I had two uncles, my dad's youngest brothers, that were over in Japan fighting. And then they told me, when they come home on visits, they told me about it. One was in the Army and one was in the Marines. And some of the stories they told me, I wasn't very interested in either one of those. So I had my dad sign my name and I enlisted in the Navy. And so from there I took a train all the way to San Diego for training.
Was 27 months in Iraq and the rest of the time was at Fort Riley doing garrison.
A year in the States and a year in Vietnam.
Alabama, North Dakota, and Alaska.
I was on board the USS Los Angeles, CA-135.
You know, it's kind of funny. I used to have a lot of really good friends. I had maybe 3 best friends. When I went to service, their lives continued, mine stopped. And since I wasn't there, I missed out. So by the time I'd come home, everybody had kind of clicked up, knew who they could hang out with. Everybody had kids. I wasn't married, no kids. And, you know, so integrating back into that friendship was more difficult. And now I'd have to say, I hate to say it, but I have friend acquaintances. And I can't even really say friends because it's not like what it used to be. We don't hang out like we used to. We don't share the same interests as much. And whereas I'm more willing to help somebody out if they need help, they're more apprehensive about helping. And it's like, yeah, okay. So I mean, as far as relationships go, I had a difficult time kind of getting my relationships back on track. Because when I was in the military, I had my friends there all the time. Like I said, 24/7. And if you wanted to get away from them, you could. friends home, it's harder to get with them to hang out than it is to get away from them. So it's, yeah, so that's changed. My family life has changed. I was more attentive to family. I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, I love my family. I tried to be there as best I could, but I think after the service made me more open to selfless service. You know, I mean, where it wasn't like, well, okay, if I do this for you, what are you going to do for me? Or what can you do for me? It's more of, well, here, let me give you a hand. You know, I don't need anything. Yeah, it is what it is. But, you know, relationships with families do strain. I mean, being in the military and having a family, whether it be wife, kids, or mother and father, sister, brother, whatever, it's hard. I mean, it puts strain on them. My mom happened to be sick, and so I missed out. But I'd like to think she knew what I was doing was the right thing for me, and yeah, hopefully, you know. Mm-hmm. But in all regards, I'm not unhappy that I did it. Even with all the aftermath, I'm still here. I'm a better person for it, and we just keep driving on.
Trying to convert from civilian life to a structured, very close, everything is programmed and this is the way it is, and that was a little different. You know, try and get into that mode. But I understood what that was about once I got into the war zone too. It made sense. You got to have structure. You got to have. Anyway, it made sense then. Didn't while I was there.
That first 2 years, they took a boy and made a man out of him. That's about the best way I can say. I was just a man.
I guess the biggest one was when I came back from overseas. Of course, that was the, you know, the era of protests or whatever against the military. You know, they didn't want to see you in your uniform. You know, in the military, you were baby killers, you were this and that and whatnot. And, you know, you just had to. I got over it pretty quick. You know, I just, you know, you got back, you changed into some regular clothes, and people didn't really recognize, you know, didn't realize that you were in the military anymore. So I guess that was the hardest thing, was that they didn't like that you were in the military, or, you know, you were over doing a police action in Vietnam. That was back then, instead of a war, it was a police action.
So if you were drafted, did you go when you were like 18?
I was 19.
19. So you weren't married yet?
No. I was, in fact, I just started dating Nance probably 2 months before I got drafted. So our whole courtship and whatever went 2 years with me gone most of the time, and it still worked out. I mean, I still got 47 years.
Wow.
So, you know, it was as it was. Neither one of us, I didn't want to do it because I couldn't guarantee her my return, you know. And I really didn't want her to worry all while I was gone, but that I can't control.
So did you write letters back and forth to each other?
Oh my God, yes. Lots of letters. In fact, I think she wrote one pretty near every day.
Wow.
She kept me up on things, but it, and you know, how do you come up with something every day to keep you dialed in? But
right.
that put a little burden on things too, with having somebody waiting for you back here, and you giving them no guarantees that you're coming back here upright anyway. And in fact, that's how Moon ended up with that red Ford I had and I don't know why Mom kept the letter, but Dale showed it to me after she passed. It was in her stuff, and it was the letter I wrote home telling her to sell the car. I wasn't gonna need it. I mean, we were going through the Tet Offensive and that was a busy time. I mean, we were very busy. We had counted at one time, we had 45 days in a row where we had some kind of enemy contact, whether it was sniper to booby traps to whatever. But 45 days in a row, well, it makes you a little tense after a while. And I just figured I wasn't gonna need a car. I wasn't planning on surviving it, I guess.
They just discharged us and that was it. I couldn't get a job, no jobs. I mean, I couldn't make any money. So then they had a 5220, so then we got some money. That's the way it started. And then from there is when I got started in the car business.
A few times. One of the times was we were on a patrol and we had confirmation that there was an insurgent in the area, that we were a high value target. And we ended up taking our FOB commander, our sergeant major, for the post we were stationed at. And it was just a routine thing, and he wanted to check out what we were doing, and so he came with. And well, when we got to the suspected insurgents' stronghold and whatnot, we got there, and it turned out to be just a shell of the building, basically, and some generator type stuff, you know, construction, because it was in the midst of being built. Well, it turns out that this insurgent was well known by the area and whatnot. The whole mission was to actually go on recon and see if we could see him, find him, capture and bring him back. We got there, and of course he wasn't in the area at that time. It was false information, and so when we got there, we'd kind of milled the area, cleared it, checked everything, you know, started gathering intel, and the sergeant major said, "All right, burn it to the ground." And I looked at my LT, and he looked at me, and I asked the sergeant major to clarify what he meant. And he basically said, "Burn it. We know he's an insurgent. We don't want him back here." And that's the destruction of infrastructure there at that point in time was not good. I mean, we tried to stay away from any more damage than we could control. Mm-hmm. So when it came down to it, I looked at my LT, he looked at me, and he basically said, "Sergeant." And I said, and our LT was pretty green. He was a young guy, just out of ROTC. So he didn't really know the authoritative, I mean, he knew the rank structure, and he outranked that sergeant major, but at the same time, he was the base sergeant major, so things kind of get a little left and right sometimes. And so I had a sidebar with my LT, and I said, you know, we can't do that. And he's like, "No, I was on the same lines." And so we basically stood up to him and said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, you got two options. We can take you up the road and drop you with one of your units, or you can come back to post with us. We're not doing that." And he was basically like, "Okay, why not I'm gonna go link up with my troops up the road." We were like, "Not a problem." Took them up the road, dropped them off, and continued our mission, and then went back to post. So, I mean, stuff like that, it was pretty commonly frequent over there. And if you didn't have the guts to stand up to it, you were implicated by it. You could get charged with stuff, I mean, UCMJ action and stuff like that. So we tried to stay away from anything that had to do with compromising your moral integrity, as well as whether or not it's a lawful order. In this case, it was an unlawful order because it was damage to infrastructure. So had we had not been there, I bet you his unit probably would have done it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if that would have been because of fear or more along the lines of whether or not any of them had the guts to stand up and say, "No, it's not what we're going to do." So.
said my cousin studying here in Madison to be a doctor. Said one Saturday morning, he says, I'm pretty well caught up here. He says, how about we go to get some business time and go and get a beer. So that's where we went. And I didn't know anything about taverns because I never drank a beer that I got in the Navy. So he says, Johnson's Creek. That sounds all right to me. So we're sitting in there, and upstairs, a dance hall. And there was a bar on the bottom and the area of tables and chairs. So we were sitting there talking, and then they quit dancing, come down and have a drink, I guess. And here comes two gals toward us. And one of them is Lila Bell Bailing, and the other one was a gal that I knew because I picked her up hitchhiking one time, just before school started. So I'm trying to figure out if she's got a boyfriend or are married, you know. Well, it's pretty hard to ask something like that right out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't. But she had an alcohol drink somebody gave her, and she never drank, so she gave it to me, and I didn't care for alcohol either. But we were jabbering and jabbering, and I never found out the answer I was after. So then a couple days I was thinking about it and thinking, and I thought, well, if I would buy a gal a drink and she'd go over there and give it to somebody else, I probably would be unhappy with her. So I figured, I doubt if she'd do that. I knew her well enough for that. Mm-hmm. So I figured she wasn't married or had a boyfriend. So then I thought, well, if she was married, that situation would be worse. So I didn't think she was married. So then I called her up on the phone and asked to see if she wanted to go to the Milwaukee car races. She says, yep. So that was the beginning of when we got married in 1949.
That was kind of the unusual one though too, when you think about it. I had extended school because because of my grades and that, they sent me on to NCO school. And you come out of there a non-commissioned officer, an E5, a buck sergeant. Well, for whatever reason, I ended up a staff sergeant after 21 months, and you're supposed to have about 7 years time and grade before you even considered. So how in the hell did that work? But I did it in 21 months, and the whole idea was I should have probably gone on and made it a career, because I already had the lifer stripe, you know, you just keep it going. But I had had enough military, but that was it, no more, because then I'd have been back in Vietnam within 6 months back in those days. You did tour after tour with a little break in between. But that's the way it was, and you either could deal with it or you couldn't. And I didn't want to deal with it.
One of the things is when you went to eat, you had to, they made you take a little bit of everything. And I'm going, oh man, you know, to this day I don't eat Brussels sprouts because of went through the chow line, got my food, sat down, ate it, and as I'm leaving the chow hall, the drill instructor says, where are you going? Back to formation. No, he says, you have to eat everything on your tray. Well, I don't want them. What you take them for? I was told to take them. Well, you learn, like I said, you learn real quick. If you don't want something, you don't take it. Well, I had to eat these Brussels sprouts. And I didn't chew them, I just put them in my mouth and swallowed them whole. So I could just be done with it. But it's a one-time lesson. You don't want something, you don't take it.
I did have one instance, we were on patrol, and my gunner, not one of the brightest lads, and which is funny because his dad is a master chief in the Navy. You'd figure he would make someone rub off. We had something that we did to warn cars. We had a little pen flare, and if you get too close, you wave them off. They keep coming. You wave them off again with the flag. They keep coming. Shoot a pen flare at them. If they don't stop, then you engage the target. We gave them plenty of chances. You know, at that point, if you're using the pen flare, they ain't stopping. Well, they had a little keychain, ring, whatever, attached to the bottom. You pull it. Well, my gunner decides one day that he's going to attach it to his vest. Make it easy. He can grab it right away. He did, and as we're coming through one of the small little towns, villages, it gets hooked on the turret. And I kid you not, all of a sudden I hear, and nothing but fireball and red smoke everywhere inside the truck. And I'm like, did we get hit? I didn't hear a boom. And I look down and here's this, and it blind. I mean, flares are bright at close range. Here's this little pen flare burning on my bag of grenades. I yelled, security halt. Our driver slammed the brakes on. I got out and I went, whoo! Out the window, everything went. Luckily, the pen flare fell off of the bag and it melted because that equipment we had was junk. It was some weird material that was supposed to be fire retardant. Burned a hole through my pouch. Didn't get the pyro, but I just said to myself, you gotta be kidding me. You got in trouble for it because it's a sensitive item. It's an accountable item, and you're supposed to have to turn it in.
Right.
You know,
turn it in.
Oh, we had paperwork up the yin yang to clear that one out. I never let him live that down. Every time if I can get a chance to talk to him, I'll be like, yeah, you got any pen flares? And he just is like, no.